This video is for a lesson on two-point perspective. We'll be taking a basic tutorial like this, and then you'll have the option to turn it into something more creative. So these are some of the rules of two-point perspective. All the vertical lines that we're going to use, we'll be drawing boxes, so all the vertical lines are going to be vertical. That seems really simple and obvious, but it can get a little confusing when you're first learning, so just keep that in mind. And then all the diagonal lines that we're going to use are going to intersect at both points on the horizon line. Opposite diagonal lines will intersect with one another. So you'll see what that means as we get a little further into this video. This drawing that I found online is one of the sources of inspiration for this project. So I just wanted to show you some of these different sources of inspiration so you kind of have some idea of what you might want to ultimately do with the project. So notice the bottom part here has a little birdhouse. That would be one of the structures in perspective. Another inspiration is from this drawing video online, and you can see there's a swing in this. So it's pretty small in this drawing, but you can make one of the boxes that you're drawing kind of the dimensions to turn it into a swing. There's a lot of different online inspiration sources that I found, so I collected them on this Pinterest board. So just so you can kind of get the idea that we will have a tree sort of holding together the picture, but you could do a lot of different things with this. So obviously this one got pretty imaginative. And a lot of these sources, as you can probably tell, are student drawings. So here's another one where they got pretty imaginative with the basic assignment. Another assignment or drawing that I found, this is a different assignment, as you can probably tell, but you could turn your different boxes into sort of more just forms to kind of do some cool decorating on. So do sort of a Zentangle pattern like this artist did, or really anything you want. So again, just kind of showing you more options where you can get creative. So this doesn't have a tree as the basis, but you could do something funky with different boxes like this artist did. So making them look transparent and filling them with something, or making them full of holes, or putting a cube within the cube. So really anything you want, you can have fun with it. We will sort of have these, at least 3 of these boxes in perspective. They'll probably be held together by a tree structure in some way, though I suppose you could turn the basic tree structure into something a little more abstract if you wanted to. All right, so without further ado, we'll get to the tutorial. Okay, I have my setup here. I've got my drawing paper, and then underneath that I've got a larger sheet of paper, which I'll give you. I've got some drawing pencils, just basic graphite to start this, and I've got a ruler. The one that I happen to have here at home is just a 12-inch. You guys will be using ones that are a little bit longer at school, and that'll make this easier. Normally I would use my HB pencil or my 2B pencil, number 2 pencil, because I want to be drawing lightly for the beginning steps of this. But I find that that doesn't show up really well on camera, so I'm going to be drawing a little bit darker than I would normally to make sure that you guys can see okay. So, without further ado, I'm going to start this out the way all of our perspective drawing videos do, with an eye level, sometimes called a horizon line. I want to put this for mine, I think, a little bit below the halfway mark. So since my sheet of drawing paper is 12 inches tall, maybe I'll put it down here at 6.5 or 7 inches. I'll do 6.5. And I'm going to actually measure on the other side too, because, actually I'm going to double check how I lined this up. All right, so there's my 6.5. And I'm going to make sure I have this lined up correctly over here so that when I connect them, we're going to have a straight line. So when you're doing perspective drawings like this, you really want to make sure that horizontal lines really are horizontal, although we won't have really any other horizontal lines in a 2-point perspective video. And your vertical lines, as you saw in the rules at the very beginning of the video, will be truly vertical. So they'll be at a perfect 90-degree angle from our horizon line. All right, now as you can see, I've actually extended this beyond the sides of my drawing paper, and that's why we have this larger piece of paper here to begin with. So I don't necessarily have this perfectly lined up, so let's see if I have this lined up well enough though and centered well enough to do what I wanted to do. All right, I'll make it a little more centered. So I want to have a few extra inches on each side. And I'm going to use that so that I'm going to put my vanishing points, there are 2 of them in 2-point perspective, go figure. I'm going to put them off to the very edges of the sheet of paper. You could technically put them on the sheet of paper, but it makes for a really sort of weird, exaggerated kind of perspective, almost like a fisheye lens or something. So this is just a little trick to help with that. Okay, so we've got this out here, and while I'm at it, I'm going to go ahead and add little X's for the vanishing points. So hopefully those will be nice and clear. And I know my eye level is kind of light, but hopefully it's dark enough you can see it. All right, so I'm going to start with a box somewhere down here. We looked at a couple of those examples, so you might later turn this into, say, a birdhouse or a swing. So now notice, first thing that I'm doing is lining up my ruler with the bottom of the edge of the paper, so that when I do my first line on here, I'm going to make sure this is really nice and perpendicular. It's really very vertical. So it's perpendicular to the bottom edge of the page and perpendicular to our eye level. All right, so I've got the top and bottom of this. I was thinking, oh, did I make this a little bit close to the edge of the page? Maybe I did, so, but I'm going to try to work with it for the sake of the video. All right, so this is going to be the corner of our box. So I'm now going to connect the bottom corner, or the bottom of this corner and the top of this corner, so the top and bottom points of the line, to both of our vanishing points. So that, I believe, is our next rule, that all of our diagonal lines connect out to these vanishing points. So take your time, line those up as well as you can. All right, so again, I'm drawing a little bit darker. That would not be what I'd be doing normally, but I want to make sure you guys can see it in the video. All right, now here comes the part why I said that it would be better if I had a longer ruler. I can't quite reach that. So hopefully you guys don't have that problem at school, because I have longer rulers for you. But we're just going to try to make do and get this as accurate as possible. So really make sure at home, if you think mine looks a little bit off, try to do a little bit better than I did, okay? Because again, I am working with not ideal tools. Okay, I think I got that pretty well lined up in the end. Okay, and then again, we're going to make that work over here as well. All right, so if you need to stop the video and catch up, go for it. These are maybe a little bit light, but they do intersect with our vanishing point on the side. All right, now is when we decide how long we're going to make this. So is it going to be more like a cube or kind of like a long flat box? I'm going to go ahead and say, okay, I want to make this kind of small on this side. Remember how I was saying that I wanted, it was a little close to the edge of the page. So I'm going to deal with that by making this side a little short. So notice I kind of sketched that in, made sure it looked really, really vertical, and then I can even use my ruler, lining it up with the bottom and top edges of the page. All right, so there we go. And then the same thing on the other side. And since I had to make it a little bit short on that side, I can compensate by maybe making it a little bit longer on this side. So my birdhouse will have a longer side and a shorter side rather than being a cube. Okay, so again, just checking to make sure that those look really vertical. And I'm pretty satisfied. So now I've got two more lines, and again, we have the top and bottom points of each of these lines. And remember, all of the angles we're going to do are going to go out to our vanishing point. So earlier in the semester, I taught you guys, hey, you can draw a basic cube kind of in a sort of kind of a mimic of one-point perspective, although it's not truly linear perspective. You could do that like this, but you could also do one that looks more like two-point perspective, and that looks something like this. So we know that this top is going to be sort of diamond shaped, sort of flattened out, but we're not going to just make it random. We're going to get there by connecting that point to this side and that point to this side. So still connecting everything to our vanishing points. And again, bear with me as my ruler is a little bit short. But you want to, since you guys will have better rulers, you can make this even more accurate than mine is. So that's what I want you to aim for. I want you to try to make yours even more accurate than mine is. Okay. All right, you can see that I've got a box. I'm going to go one step further here, and I'm going to make this look like a glass box, just so that you know how to do this in case you do want to make your box see-through, or you want to give it a railing, or who knows what you want to do to it. All right, so again, I'm going to go with the bottom point, and I'm going to connect this side out to the opposite vanishing point. How do I know which one to do this with? Well, we know we want to see the bottom plane of the box in order to make it look see-through, and by doing that, that's going to give us the bottom plane of the box. I felt like my paper just shifted a little bit. If you are having that happen, you could just take a little piece of painter's tape or artist tape, which are types of tape that will lift off, and you could tape that down. Remember to untape that when we are finished with this step so that it doesn't kind of stick more permanently than you want it to. All right, so there we go. Now I can see that not all of these have been as 100% accurate as I've wanted them to be. So that may cause us a little bit of trouble, but hopefully we'll get it pretty close. All right, so again, I went from the bottom point to the opposite side. All right, so that gives us our bottom of the box, and then I'm going to connect this point up to here, and that should ideally be a vertical line. If it's not quite vertical, which mine is maybe not exactly, I'm going to fudge it. So I'm going to keep my line vertical, even if that means that I have to, you know, kind of make this work. That's going to make it look more realistic in the end. All right, I'm going to zoom in on that so you can see. All right, so you can see my box. All right. So now we're going to do the next box. So in the video that we started out with at the beginning, and which you could always refer back to if you want to, they did another box up here in the air next. So I'm going to go ahead and do that too. So this will be sort of like a second story to my treehouse if I'm doing a treehouse, or if you want to make it into something like funkier in some way and more abstract, it'll just be a higher box. All right, so starting with my vertical line, notice that I lined up my ruler at the top and bottom of the page to make that as vertical as possible. So this one I'm making a little bit bigger. And the placement is up to you. If you want to, you could place that right in the center. Same with this one down at the bottom. If you would wanted to do it on this side, you could do it on that side. All right, now I'm connecting the top of my line to my vanishing point as accurately as I possibly can. And now I'm going to do the same thing, since I'm already on that vanishing point, we'll do the same thing on the bottom with the same vanishing point. And then we're going to do the same thing on the other side. So as far as the placement and the size of these, you do want to use a good bit of the paper. You don't necessarily want to go right up to the edge of the paper because you don't want it to, this is kind of the important part of your drawing. You don't want that to get accidentally cut off when you're photographing it and you have to crop the photo a little bit, or if we're matting it. Which is using basically a paper frame that will overlap a little bit around all the edges. All right, so we connected the top and bottom of our line to our vanishing points, and now we get to decide how long the box is going to be, basically the dimensions. Or you can think of this as the second story of your treehouse. So, let's see, I'll make it about that big. And again, I'm making sure to line this up with the top and bottom of the paper. And I'm just drawing my line in there. All right, and then on this side, I'll make this a little bit longer. Just kind of thinking about, all right, how is this going to fit or balance in the space? And there's not one way to do this. In fact, I'm hoping that everybody's drawings will look pretty different. All right, so now we are going to create the bottom of this box. So when it was underneath the horizon line, we were able to see the top plane of the box. And then the bottom plane of the box we added, but you really could only see that if it were see-through. The exact opposite is true if your box is above your eye level. So it's kind of floating in the air. Or in this case, it may be built on a higher branch of your treehouse. So now I'm connecting this bottom point of the line to the opposite side vanishing point. And again, if you need to stop the video, go for it. On the other hand, if you have to speed me up, because you kind of got it the first time, then you can be speeding me up or drawing while I'm drawing. All right, so now I'm on to the other line that we did, and we're going to connect the bottom point of that line to the opposite side vanishing point. Okay, so now we can see the bottom of the box because it's above our heads. Again, we can make this more see-through by then drawing the top plane of the box. So if we were able to see that top plane, it would be seen through the sides of the box. So I'm going to connect that top point of the line to the opposite side vanishing point. And I can do the same thing over here. So connecting to the opposite side vanishing point. Making sure that lines up as well as I possibly can. All right, and then I can connect this and this, and it looks like they line up pretty well. So again, we need to make sure these are vertical. So if your lines were not perfectly accurate, you may have to kind of redraw them, redraw the angles a little bit so that you can make sure that those are perfectly accurate. All right. Now hopefully that hasn't made it too hard to see what's really going on here, but I'm just going to make a little bit darker a few of these lines to hopefully remind you guys and remind myself which of these planes are the ones that you would be able to see under normal circumstances, and which ones you would only see if your box were made of glass, or if you had X-ray vision, or whatever. Okay, so there we go. And if you are getting totally confused, you could just decide, you know what, my box is not going to be see-through. But it will limit some of your choices later on. All right, so again, stop the video if you need to stop the video and kind of take a moment to figure out which lines was it that she just made darker. Okay, it was this one, and this one, and then this bottom plane. Do. And this line happened to line up pretty closely with some of those other lines, but don't worry if that happens. All right, now next stage of the project is going to be to do my third box, and this one in all of our tutorials is always the one that straddles the horizon line. So unless it's see-through, you would not see either the top plane or the bottom plane. You'll see what I mean in just a minute. All right, and I could even, if I wanted to, make these attach. I don't think I'm going to right now because that might just complicate things a little bit more than we want them to be at this moment. And let's see. All right, so I took a moment to make sure I lined up my ruler, make sure this is really vertical, kind of thinking about, all right, what is my composition going to be like? Do I like how this looks? And then once I have it where I want it, then I can connect the top point to one side. Now where I'm lining this up will kind of determine how does this relate to this box. So if I wanted it to be more underneath it, okay, so I've got my setup here with my drawing paper. Okay, sorry for the jump there. My video got cut off, but as you can see, I followed this using the same procedure as we did before. So I decided where I wanted the box to be by putting in the corner that's closest to us, and then I connected the bottom point to each vanishing point and the top point to each vanishing point, and then I decided where how big I wanted the box to be in the dimensions by putting in a vertical line and a vertical line. So what you missed was just kind of a little bit of thinking about where do I want this to sit, how much room do I want it to take up, where do I want it to be in relation to my other two boxes. And I did decide when I first put this in and then I did my angles, the bottom looked a little bit flat. It wasn't as dramatic an angle as I wanted it to be. So I made it a little bit longer and that changed my angle. All right, so this would be what my box would look like if it is opaque, if it's made out of wood or cardboard or what have you. But you cannot see the bottom and you cannot see the top. So again, just like we did on our other ones, we can connect the top and bottom to the opposite vanishing points. Oops. Okay, and that gives us our bottom plane. And then I'm going to do the same thing over here. So again, connecting to my opposite side vanishing point will give us that top plane. And again, trying to make these as accurate as possible because that will then make sure everything lines up the way we want it to when we go to connect our top and bottom planes. Okay, so again, connecting to the opposite side. All right, and so I've done a pretty good job, but not perfect. So those line up pretty well, but maybe not perfectly. So I'm just going to fudge it a little bit, and I'm going to pretend that they do match up perfectly while keeping my vertical line vertical. And they're close enough that you're not really going to notice that maybe the true point on the X was not totally lined up. So those X's. So I made my line vertical. If yours is not vertical when you line them up, and actually mine is not as vertical as I want it to be, so let me make sure. I must have lined that up wrong. Okay, I think that's a little better. So if they don't line up, it just means that you got a little bit off. You didn't do this quite accurately, so try again or freehand it so that they do line up. All right, so again, if you're getting a little bit confused, this was my original line. This is 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 my original. This is my original. And this is my original. So you can darken those up a little bit. Or, better yet, now we're going to erase the lines that we don't need, which are the parts of the orthogonal lines that are imaginary. So I'm going to take my eraser. Really, I should find my larger eraser. I don't want to ruin the point of this one. No point in that. And I'm getting rid of where these lines extend. Now we may still need those around, these vanishing points around. So you know what, I'm going to go back in and I will keep just that eye level for now. So that way, if I want to use this again and use those vanishing points again, I can make sure everything's lined up because I still have that as my reference point. And also it's taped down. So again, same thing on this side. I got carried away and started doing my eye level line, but really I'm just going to erase everything else. And I'll probably then go in and use my pencil top eraser, my small eraser, to do the detailed bits of that. But already I think it is a little bit clearer what's going on here. And so hopefully now, finishing this off, going in, erasing what we don't need. You can make the main lines a little bit darker. So again, in this bottom one, the one below eye level, we see that top plane. All right. And we do have some additional stuff that we don't need. So this shape in here, that's the bottom plane of the box. I'll make it just a tad bit darker. And then I've got that opposite corner. So we don't need that part. So that line used to go all the way out. We don't actually need that. That's imaginary. And then again, this part, this is the real part of the line, and anything past that corner is imaginary. All right? And we can do the same thing with these other boxes. So here's the floor of my box. All right, and here's the corner. So that floor, once it goes past that corner, it's imaginary. So I can erase that. Same thing over here. That's the real part, but it's it's invisible unless it's see-through, unless your box is see-through. But then after that, it's imaginary. With the top plane, here's the top plane, which you only see if your box is glass or if it's got maybe slats in it. So then this part is imaginary, so I will erase that. And then here it's real, and then it's imaginary, so I'm going to erase that. And on the final box, here's my top plane, the one that we only see if your box is see-through. That's the top plane, and there's the far corner. So, this part over here to the side of that corner, that's imaginary, and then following from this corner, anything to the left of that vertical line is also imaginary. And here it just kind of almost coincided with the other line. So, all right, so there you have it. I'm going to end this tutorial here, And then we're going to put our tree in the center of that. That will be part of our next tutorial. So just to kind of go back to our example, that is kind of the idea we'll be going for when we put some branches of a tree in here. And who knows, maybe we could add a little bit to some of the basic shapes we've already done. Extend it out, make a porch, or maybe erase part of it to make kind of two levels to the boxes.